Hey guys, so we are ready for Chapter 7, A Studio Accident. I hope y'all have had a great week and I'm looking forward to seeing you on Wednesday. Worried, Nancy stood tensely, waiting for the housekeeper to continue. It's about your father, Hannah Gruen began. Oh, has he been hurt? Nancy cried out fearfully. Sympathetically, the woman put an arm around the girl's shoulders. Yes, dear, but Mr. Drew is very fortunate, Hannah went on, not to have been injured more severely. He was attacked in his office by an unknown assailant. How dreadful, Nancy cried out. Tell me what happened, she urged as Hannah paused a moment. Your father was seated at his desk. He heard the door open and thought it was his secretary who was late. Instead, a masked man with a hat pulled low over his forehead rushed in and attacked your father. He fought back, but suddenly his assailant gave him a hard blow which knocked him out. He was unconscious when his secretary found him. How horrible, Nancy exclaimed. Where is Dad now? Hannah said he was in the hospital. The doctor who had been called in had insisted he be taken there and remain quiet for a while. I must go to Dad at once, Nancy said. Which hospital, Hannah? River Heights General. Nancy hurried to the hospital. Upon inquiry, she learned her father was in room 782. Her heart pounding, Nancy went up in the elevator and walked swiftly down the hall. The door to room 782 was open. Mr. Drew was in bed, propped up with pillows. Oh, Dad, Nancy murmured, kissing him lightly. Now don't worry, honey, her father smiled wanly. I'm really all right. That doctor just wants to make a checkup. Well, I'm glad you're all right, said Nancy, but her eyes traveled to the several bruises on her father's cheeks and forehead, and she thought his eyes seemed to glisten more than usual. He probably was feverish, she decided. I'm glad you came, honey, the lawyer said. Of course, this little scrape I got into means I'll have to postpone my trip to Honolulu. Never mind, said Nancy. I won't leave yet either. The mystery of Kalakula can wait. I'm afraid it can't, Mr. Drew replied. My attacker said something which I believe makes it imperative for you and the others to go ahead without me and start solving the mystery. The lawyer explained that just before he had lost consciousness from the knockout blow, his assailant had remarked acidly, Maybe this will keep you on the mainland. Nancy's jaw set. It seems to prove that your assailant is one of the Devil's Corps. Her father nodded. I'm sorry that I didn't get a look at his face. In fact, it was when I tried to that he gave me the final blow. All I can tell you is that he wore a gray tweed suit. Nancy, I wish you would go to my office and see if you can pick up any clues. The police were notified, and they're probably there. Mr. Drew smiled fondly at his daughter. Maybe you can give them a little help. Nancy agreed to go at once and return to the hospital later. She hurried to the lawyer's office and found his secretary, Mrs. Robertson, on the verge of hysterics. Oh, Nancy, how is he? The young woman cried out. Dad's really feeling pretty well, Nancy replied. Please tell me your story. Miss Robertson said that she had been late getting in this morning. When she arrived, the door to Mr. Drew's private office was ajar. I sorted the mail and started to carry it in to your father's desk, she said, and there he was, lying on the floor. So you didn't see his attacker? Nancy asked. No, he'd gone before I got here. Nancy walked into her father's office. She was greeted by two police detectives whom she knew. One was busy taking fingerprints, but said he felt sure Mr. Drew's assailant had not touched any of the furniture. The other man was examining the carpet with a magnifying glass, trying to distinguish the stranger's footprints from those of other persons. I'm afraid this isn't going to be of much help, he said finally, standing up. Nancy, meanwhile, had been walking around the edge of the room, her eyes alert for any clue that the stranger unwittingly might have left. Finally, she asked, Is it all right for me to walk in the center of the room now? When the detective nodded, she began a search of chairs, table, bookcase, windowsills, and desk. Between two papers on her father's desk, she found a small piece of tweed cloth. I may have a clue, she told them. excitedly. Nancy called Miss Robertson into the room and asked her if any papers had been scattered on the floor when she found Mr. Drew there. "Oh, yes," the secretary replied. "They were all over the place. I picked them up and put them on your father's desk." Nancy turned to the detectives. "I believe this piece of tweed may have been torn from the coat of the man who attacked my father," she said. One of them put the scrap of cloth in an envelope and dropped it into his pocket. "I guess your father pulled it from the fellow's coat. It may be a big help to us." Nancy left the office and returned to the hospital. After reporting the latest finding to her father, she asked him when he would be able to make the trip to Hawaii. "Oh, I'll follow you in a few days," he said cheerily. "But you'll be home alone," Nancy protested. Mr. Drury, realizing how worried his daughter was that he might be attacked again, promised her he would not stay alone. "I'll move down to the club for a few nights," he said. Nancy made 2 more trips to the hospital that day, but there was no further news about Mr. Drew's attacker. Early the next morning, Mr. Marvin drove Bess, George, and their suitcases in the family station wagon to the Drew home. Nancy and Hannah climbed in, and the travelers set off for the airport. It was a perfect day for flying when within an hour, Nancy and her friends were winging their way across the United States toward California. "We're actually above the clouds," remarked Bess, who was seated next to a window. "I can't